Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Duma podcast. Now, viewers of this channel might realize that I'm quite keen on breaking down the barriers of ignorance and distrust in Malaysia, and in fact, anywhere around the world. Hence, the recent spate of discussions on faith and race, things which I used to see as taboo, but no longer, because I think that the more people talk about them and have conversations around them, the more change tends to happen, hopefully, possibly. And so when I approached Rita Sim and Fui K Soong, both of whom are political analysts, academics, and entrepreneurs, I did so with a view of hopefully getting an update from them on the research they did on the Chinese in Malaysia, research which they began 15 years ago, which I think, of course, has changed very much in the last 15 years or so. We are not, contrary to popular opinion, one homogenous group. But what ensued in the following conversation really did blow my mind because it made me realize that most, if in fact, if not all, almost all of us, tend to go about our daily lives without being aware of the larger forces at play, forces which tend to go far beyond our petty domestic insecurities. Of course, I won't preempt the discussion, but I would urge you to give up some of your valuable time to these two ladies because what they will share with you in the next 90 minutes or so might compel you to make some pretty important decisions in your personal lives. As always, before we begin, if you could, like, share, subscribe, etc., you know the drill. And so now, without further ado, may I present the academics and political analysts Rita Sim and Fui Ke Soong. Rita, Fui, thank you for both for doing this. Great honor and a great privilege. Thank you both for giving me the time to do this. I think obviously the discussion today will start with, but not necessarily end with, the very different types of Chinese in Malaysia. Definitely we're not homogenous. We're not of the same culture, say, for example, the Malays. And we'll get into all that. But before we start, maybe if you can both individually give me a sense of who you are and what you stand for. Fui first, maybe?
Sure. Okay. I've been doing public policy work for the last maybe 15 years. Looking at Malaysian public policy, and you can't really run away from uh the ethnic different ethnic viewpoints, because public policy involves making sure that the public policy works and has the buy-in from every community, and making sure that people understand what it's all about, and that it is essentially uh, not a zero-sum game, right? So that was what I've been trying to do for the last 15 years in working with various think tanks, and also speaking publicly on various issues on Malaysian politics.
Okay, so you're a public policy researcher, and I like the idea of that zero sum game, of it not being a zero sum game. We'll definitely talk about that.
Sure.
Rita?
Yeah. Hi, Chuang. I grew up in a family business, and a very interesting one. My the deep interest in the Chinese community in Malaysia was really because of the family business. I'm English educated, although I'm third generation in Malaysia, and a lot of my customers were hardware customers because it was a hardware business that we were doing. Not the hardware in computers, but the widgets, the paints, and the power tools, and so on. And the generation that I dealt with were actually all a lot of the starters in those businesses were Chinese educated. Okay, and I was English speaking, so I always had to be and because I was selling imported products from overseas, from Western countries, I always had to interlocute, sort of like um, work with the Chinese community with my half-baked Chinese. Okay, although I did study eventually, that was how I grew up. And then, of course, the biggest shock that I got was when I was invited to join Sinchu Media Corporation, and in media, then it opened my really the eyes to the silent Chinese community, Chinese speaking. And that's how I sort of like the experience got me to be involved in from private sector into media lah. And of course I was working with Fui on some of the research in research area, but the my aspect was not the policy one, but was looking at what was really happening on the ground. What were people really doing on the ground. Okay. So that's the background.
Wow. My history is probably not as long, but the interesting part is that I probably can give, probably provide a little bit more perspective on Sabah and Sarawak because I'm Sabahan.
Okay, good, very good.
So that you might find interesting. So it gives me a different perspective on different types of Chinese, as you say.
Absolutely fascinating. But I mean, Rita, we first met a decade and a half ago,
Yes.
and it was your research that really blew my mind because even as a Chinese, I didn't look upon myself as a different category to other Chinese, lah. And I think a lot of people make the mistake of saying, "Oh, Malaysia's Chinese, 7.5 million, all one kind." No, not true. We're not homogenous. We're not of the same fabric per se. And your G1, G2, G3 research on Chinese in that era, it really opened my mind to, oh my gosh, there's different ecosystems at play, and therefore the policymakers free, and the way governments look at us as a category, even our fellow Malaysians look at us as a category as one. We're not one. So if you could just delve into that and just give us a kind of like a preface.
Okay, maybe I can just quickly give you the background. The book that I wrote was known as Unmistakably Chinese, Genuinely Malaysian. And this book was written when I worked at Sinchu. Okay, now what actually prompted this? You see, the entire media industry, right? It was very strange at that time, about 15, 20 years ago, when print media was still king.
Yeah.
All right. All the ADEX, most of the ADEX went to English-speaking newspapers. Then we were thinking, at that time, English newspapers were not even the same number of circulation copies as Chinese newspapers were circulating. Like in Malaysia at that time, I got to set the backdrop just to give you the idea. Is that with Sinchu, Nanyang, Xiangpao, Guangming, and China Press, the total circulation per day was almost 800,000 copies, All right. And then English newspapers was only the Star. At that time, there was NST. I mean, they're still around. These two English newspapers, together with the Sun then, they never even took the English papers took 80% of the ADEX print media, Whereas the highest circulation newspapers, which was the Chinese circulations per day, was in third place. So we were wondering why that was the case. So when I was in Sinchu, I was asked to look at how do I connect with media agencies and to actually show them the value of the Chinese newspapers and where the reach out was going to be. That is then the discovery then came about that most of the media planners at that time were all English speaking. All right. So they never even read Chinese, right? So whenever they bought into media or did a media plan on print, they would just look at the largest Chinese circulation newspaper, which was at that time Sinju, and after allocating to the English-speaking media, the newspapers, then only we got a little bit of it. Okay, that's why it prompted the research. So against this background, we went on to discover, actually it was also with Fui's help, right, at that time, to then give the industry, the media industry, and also probably public, right, the language that actually the Chinese community is not homogeneous. Okay, there is the English-speaking ones, which we had at that time term as G2, and then there was G1, which was really the bigger. It was about 80-90% was actually in this G1 group, which were Chinese speaking. And then the in-betweens, the overlap was the G3, which means that that at that time and even now, there are now Chinese, there are many Chinese parents who send their children to Chinese schools. So they had Chinese and they had some Malay and they had some English. So there was all these overlaps that were that had happened. So, and a lot of the media companies and the advertisers was actually not reaching the silent majority, which is actually the bigger pie was really the Chinese speakers. But now fast forward, of course, a lot of this has actually changed because of our education system. So maybe I can pass it to Fui to pick this up now.
I think I think aside from categorizing the different groups of Chinese, I think you need to understand traditionally the three pillars of the Chinese community. It's for centuries in different forms. You have these three different pillars, which is Chinese education, Chinese associations, and Chinese media. And in anywhere you go in the world, you will find these three pillars.
And
whether it's in
anchored
North-
on this. Yeah.
anchored on this.
Mm.
Some of them weaker, some of them stronger, some of them not so apparent. Okay. So but in Malaysia, because of the existence of Chinese school in parallel with the national schools, you find that these three pillars are very, very used to be extremely prominent. And they drove a lot of the narrative for the G1s, the Chinese speaking community. The three pillars for the G1s is paramount back then. So at that time, I think if you're talking about 15 years ago and beyond, beyond that, going back in history, the Chinese community will always defend these three pillars. Right? So their politics, their policy is all centered around these three pillars. This because it's their identity. It's that their identity. But 15 years later now, media is no longer mainstream media is no longer has the hold on the narrative. Chinese schools are now quite fragmented in the sense that they don't have the same because I think about now 20%, 30% of them are now non-Chinese.
Yeah, who attend Chinese
Yeah.
schools. Yeah.
So the pillar itself, although it's strong, but the narrative is not that I feel that it's not as defensive as it used to be, right? Then Chinese associations, I mean, all of them are dying because young people aren't joining them. Okay, so the dynamics have changed. So there is the new, what is the new dynamics? I think is probably something that you're more interested in.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So yeah, that would be the next topic for you, I suppose.
Well, the thing is, in Malaysia, we make a big song and dance about being multiracial and diversity and all that. At least that's what we tell the outside world. But internally, the truth is, we are very, very siloed. I mean, we don't very much know anything really about one another, right? We might get the public holidays, but do we understand the nuances and the reasons why those holidays exist, right? How much time do we spend in each other's houses? How much time do we spend sleeping over and eating with each other? We don't. And so even we have 33 million Malaysians, roughly broken up into whatever it is, 70, 30, 50, 70, 20, 10 or whatever it is, and 5 in a line, right? We are living in our separate shells. So what do the rest of Malaysia need to know about the 7.5 million Chinese, which is a big block, but it's not homogenous? What are those elements of dynamic at play? How has it changed?
Well, one of the things that I think if we are looking at commonalities among the races in Malaysia, I think one common area that they do come together is actually food. All right, so that's where I guess that whether we visit we know that there's a Hari Raya holiday or a Chinese New Year holiday, but when we actually sit together and eat, it's where there are some commonalities. Like your mamak stores, Chinese also go into eating mamak stores. Going to eat there, and now the Muslim community will also eat Chinese food, but it has to be halal. All right.
Yeah.
So this is just the sort of like your day-to-day thing, lah. But to go deeper, it's I guess that is how do you want to pull the nation together?
Correct. It's about unity. It's about cohesion.
Unity.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not just food, lah.
Correct.
Yeah, I feel that I think in the past, because there's a certain, there's the elites, they speak English, that becomes the common language, and they all used to go to the same school and so on. And I feel that it's although they're less, the G2s, the English speaking Chinese groups are in a way, shrinking because they're older. But at the same time, you see, elites are the ones that can. It is now become a class issue. I feel that the high income groups, they can go and play golf together. They can go and hang around in restaurants in your Bangsa and Damansara Heights. But the lower income groups don't have that opportunity to interact. So I think it's it is not just an issue of race. It is also an issue of
Economic class.
economic class categories.
And actually, Chuang, there's also, you're right, there's very little mixing, because also if you look at the way that the Chinese speaking and Chinese educated Chinese in Malaysia, they consume media, I mean social media, very differently from the rest of us, and they might be just consuming everything in Chinese. So unless if you want to do the mixing, right, you have to have Malay festivals, culture, everything translated into the Chinese language for them to consume. They do not automatically consume and look at Malay media or English media even. Okay.
Yeah.
So that actually even forms, it makes it even, I think, more difficult in the mixing, won't you say, Fui?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would say that, I mean, some of it is also I feel it's also, a bit of a self-isolationist attitude, of I think you can't say it's one group or another that has actually alienated one group from another. Let me give you an example. Okay, we Rita and I run this radio station in Sabah, in Sarawak. Sarawak only a year and a little bit ago, but we've been running Kopi Kopi for the last 7 years in Sabah, and that is the number one station, okay, in Sabah. If you ask any Kadazan, you ask any indigenous, you ask any local Sabahans, they will have heard of Kopi Kopi, whether they're in Sandakan or even places where the frequency is not even available. Everyone's heard of us. You interview a Chinese, I bet you only get 2 out of 10 that has ever heard of Kopi Kopi. So
Chinese in Sabah,
Chinese in Sabah,
but the indigenous will have heard.
yes.
But
See?
but the indigenous language that we are we are using
Bahasa
Bahasa
Sabah.
or Bahasa
Okay,
Malaysia
so
there.
you cannot
yeah.
say that we're using a language that Chinese don't understand, because they all speak the same Bahasa. We all speak the same Bahasa.
They all have gone to school and had studied the national language, right? Even in Sabah.
So it has no
but they're not listening.
there's no excuse if you like, So to me it's a two-way thing. It's a two-way thing. So why has that happened? I don't know. Has it got to do with the education, or is it the way that we see the others?
So these divisions and these subdivisions and these subdivisions, even within the same state, right, is inconvenient to the people who seek unity and cohesion, peace among the people, generally, beyond the social ease of eating together. But really, we don't understand each other, right? It might be inconvenient to us as a society, but it's very convenient to the policymakers, who, by the old adage of divide and conquer, right, makes it easy for them to sow seeds of suspicion, fear, because ignorance, at the end of the day, when we don't understand each other, it's ignorance, and then they can lead to dissent and fear, and even beyond that, right, which we don't want, right, because at the end of the day, you want peace in the country. So what would speak to the divisions in Malaysia? I see you smiling at it, Rita, right? What messages, what narratives would work for everybody across the board? Chinese. Is there such a thing? And if not, then what are the sub-narratives?
I guess that one of the things that the present government, they are all trying to do is to actually bring back this national service, Okay, but the trouble is that conversations with multi-ethnic in a multi-ethnic country like ours is really very, very hard work.
But even for national service, you would want to have a sense of national pride. And the sense of national pride between races is uneven. That's a polite way of saying it. Don't you agree?
Yeah, yes, I think you see, unfortunately, I mean, we've been trying to force this. We've always prided ourselves to have taken the integration path, right? We don't force people to assimilate.
In
Okay,
fact, I
like how you
disagree. I
see,
think the
how you
policymakers have
see.
actually done stuff to amplify the divisions rather than seek to unify. I mean, what they say in public is one thing, but what they do at the policy level is another.
True, but it's what I'm trying to say is that I think at the philosophical level, we are not seeking for assimilation. I think that is the main difference
At an
between
individual level?
no, at the policy level. At the policy level, I think we've all agreed that you're Chinese, I'm Malay, I'm Indian. We just seek to integrate, to work together, not you become Malay or you become Indian or you force into a certain mold. Not like in Europe, for example, right? You don't assimilate, you do not dress like a European, you can get out. I think that is the trend now. So that was not the path that we took. And that was the path that was taken in Indonesia and largely also in Thailand, for example. You're talking about post-Merdeka, like post-colonial, the whole thing. So what Indonesia has started is that you had to change your surnames and names and all. So that is what we call assimilation. We didn't take that path. Singapore didn't take that path. We didn't take that path. So now, is that a good or bad thing? I don't know. Okay, would it have been better if we had done the assimilation and we may not need to have this conversation today? But that would have taken a lot of bloodshed. That's my point. Because we didn't, we virtually have to live with this.
So I think that it's going to be very difficult to change this
I think it's going to be very difficult to change, especially now when you're talking about a rise in identity politics rather than assimilation now. Assimilation has become the platform, the language to, and if you can say an excuse, but that is actually a reason for then not to have to actually emphasize on identity politics. So assimilation in the West, I'm talking about in the West, has become the platform to which you then say, okay, these people can't assimilate, so therefore, if you can't behave like us, then we are different. Then you will have to leave, or I will have to go, or whatever it is, So I think we are probably, in some ways, you're talking about constructive
Yes.
conversation.
Yes.
Right? I think that ship has sailed and is not necessarily a better ship anyway.
What is the better ship?
Better ship is where we are now. Where we are now, you have to accept that Kadazans are Kadazans, Ibans are Ibans, Sabahs are Chinese, and Malays are Malays, and Indians are Indians.
But that's the thing. The Chinese Chinese are not even Chinese with one broad sweep, though.
I think you have to look at the generational thing. Like I said, the three pillars now has become also a thing of the past. Think of the past in the sense that associations are now no longer have the hold over the young people. Mainstream media, at least I'm talking about mainstream media, is no longer has that kind of hold on the narrative either. And same thing with Chinese schools. A lot of people are actually going to international schools.
And private schools.
Of course, again, we're talking about elites. So now it has become a class issue rather than a race issue. the Malays are also having the same problem.
Yeah.
Class, it's a class issue for them. Same thing with Chinese. It's also a class issue for us.
So we are a couple of years into the.
So we
yeah.
are actually in some ways, we've actually gone beyond this forcing people into, or rather, I had an interesting conversation. Okay, let me bring you to this. I was speaking to a professor the other day, and I say, look, having not been able to integrate people, we didn't assimilate people anyway. We integrate people. We've actually worked. It has actually worked so far. Whether whether
by and large,
okay, it's not like may not be to your ideal, may not be to your standard, may not be to your vision of what you envisioned it like 50 years ago. But it has kind of like rolled along, right? And we've not had any untoward incident. Okay, whether it will or not, we don't know. So why don't we just agree to disagree and agree on things that we can agree and work on those things? I think we should be working on things that we can agree and agree then to leave aside what we don't agree. And I think that conversation hasn't really started. And with the added external threat of a very, very difficult, I would say, next 10 years of geopolitics in the region, I think that is the whole construct of what Malaysian society should be cannot work on integration, assimilation, what this unity, all that is gone.
And also, I think that at this stage, the sort of 15 years on after this book, right?
Yeah.
The whole dynamics of Malaysian politics has also changed. The demographic has also changed. There was a lot of, earlier on, you see there was federalism, but now you're seeing that there's a lot of breakout, in the Sarawak wants to do their own thing, Sabah wants to do their own thing. Sabah and Sarawak want to combine together as, like the Borneo states, right? So it's quite, the 7.5, we come back to this 7.5 million Chinese. Now the way that it's being looked at is your population size is also dropping. All right. So when the politicians want to get your votes, right, you're going to have less and less areas that are really fully Chinese. But at most, maybe nowadays, maybe for about maximum 45 parliamentary seats, that would be really all Chinese majority, right? We are saying like maybe more than 50%. You're going to have, it's more and more, it's going to get less and less actually, because the Malay Muslim Bumiputra population will be the majority. So, but let's say maybe in another 10 years, the Malay Muslim population could be 75% of the total population. Okay.
Well, it probably is already, but within the constituencies themselves, even though they've been redrawn at the convenience, shall we say, right, of the powers that be.
It's not been redrawn at all now, Chuang. It's not. There's no delineation. Another delineation. It's still sitting at 222 parliamentary seats.
Quite, but for example, Segambut, right, which I'm from, it's got something like 450,000. I can't exact numbers but one seat, right? And then you've got others much smaller, like 50,000. I mean, but let's not get into the weeds on that discussion, but I suffice to say, I mean, we're 2 years into this whole unity government thing now, right, with Anwar, right? And there seems to be a lot of dissatisfaction with this policy impasse that he can't really move and all that, right? So we're coming to the next poll in a couple of years' time, if it's called early, if it's probably not. But how do the policymakers look at this block of Chinese? What messages, which parties, what are the messages, what turns them on, what turns them off? What should people need to know?
I think at this stage, right, it's been quite a struggle because the unity government, it wasn't actually, I think that if you notice, it's not actually easy to pull different parties together, right? And it's quite a struggle. And that and it's even more difficult now because the unity government also inherited a lot of infrastructure and past policies that they are trying to unlock, and to unlock and rejig, right? And then at a time when the geopolitics also has shifted, the American-China play has become so important and tenuous that ASEAN countries and Malaysia, no difference, right? Is also caught in this sort of dynamics. So whether it's going to be hard when we, if you talk about Malaysia Day, I mean, the Sabah and Sarawakians on September 16, they don't really think too much about it, right? It's only another public holiday, all right? So it seems as if there's going to be a lot more, a lot more blocks coming up. And I think going forward, with even the political parties, it looks like it's more and more trying to bring different groups together. Then it's a question of how do you influence, okay, let's say, what does the Chinese contribute to the whole voting bloc? Because at the end of the day, every vote counts, right? Can you get the Chinese out to vote? I mean, the Sungai Bakap one, I think a lot of the Chinese didn't come out to vote, right? Which resulted in what the results are going to be.
Yeah,
So that dynamics, a lot of it is sort of moving, Chuang. And I think that this clustering was at that time just to give it the language. But I'm not sure that the way that I guess that the Chinese community to a certain extent is going to be quite standoffish. I don't even want to participate. That's the feeling I'm getting. Politicians are trying to make them.
I think what is very important to understand is why they are caught in this is because the current government came in on the back of non-Malay votes. So that will always be a point of insecurity. So that's why you will see that at times the current government would be, oh, okay, we need to stick to the reform agenda, what we had promised our, constituents to do. And then suddenly, on the other hand, they have this overreach of overcompensating for the Malay community. So you will see this, and I don't think this is going to go away for quite some time, simply because that is the political reality. This is real politics. Okay, you're learning what's going on the ground. Yes, you have your ideal, and then what is the reality? What gets you votes? What gets you in power? What gets you in government? And what gets you the government machinery to work for you to get to where you want to be? So that, to me, is the reality of politics, and I don't think that has got anything to do with well, I wouldn't say okay. It is to me that is the practical side of politics, right? So what you're interested to know is how the different Chinese communities are reacting to all this.
Well, I'm interested
I'm
interested in cohesion. I'm interested in peace. I'm interested in unity. I'm a little bit disturbed by the silos we've built around ourselves. A bit disturbed by this, ignorance we have of each other, right? And ignorance which then leads to fear and suspicion. That can't be good as a nation. If we have to live together, we should live together in peace and knowledge about each other's habits and styles and cultures and faiths and what have you, right? So that's my interest. It's a very personal one. I want to love my neighbor. I need to love my neighbor.
Yeah, but the thing is that what makes you think the Chinese community want that? What makes you think people necessarily think that is essential for their daily living?
That's a much heavier statement than it actually sounds. It's very Freudian. Can you explain that?
No, not at all. I think if you ask your average Chinese, like,
don't care.
Not that I don't care.
Indifference.
They're indifferent. They're really indifferent.
Because their daily struggles are not that. they don't have time to be thinking about, that cohesion part when they have to actually make a living and when cost of living is
Correct.
high
So
and
it's
so
the
on.
wealth inequality thing, which might then break the camel's back. Because once there's not enough food on the table, then you look around at each other and says, who's to blame? That's the problem. You know what I mean? So the more knowledge we have of each other, when that time comes, not if, when that time comes, we will be more peaceable with each other. That's my sense. Okay. That's
I think I tend to disagree, because if you look at even, high income economies and all, I think that primordial thing will never go away, whether you're rich or poor or middle income or whatever. I feel that is being overplayed for too long. I think this, when I look at the world it is today, the way people kind of go into their religious beliefs and all that kind of thing, it cuts across everything. I mean, it is, at the end of the day, is about my tribe,
yeah.
right? So whether it's, so this, we've always had this narrative that, if we're going to be a rich country, so then we're not going to have any divisions. Look at Singapore. You think there are no divisions there? It's a high income economy. It's a first world country,
yeah,
right?
and a lot of dissent at the ground level.
right?
Yes,
Australia,
lot.
same thing. You think there's no dissent? Everybody has food on the table. I mean, well, at least at least at the global level, they're still a first world country. Japan, for example, why is it that they don't allow other races to despite
Immigrate,
that
yeah.
immigrate, despite their horrifically
Low birth
low
rates.
birth rate.
Yeah.
They don't care. Oh, even if I have to die as a race, I can't allow this to happen. As a first, so to me, I think we are just looking at the wrong place. I think what we have is really not that bad, and that will, I think, managing those differences, is really better than actually trying to get people to say, "Oh, you must look at my view," and so understand. Yes, and I'm not saying that we should all live in silos. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that we, although that conversation must go, and I just, to force that, I think it's going to be worse.
I think at this stage, at this stage, the current situation when you have like a very like hyperinflation, you have so many supply chain issues, and whatever community that you are in, the paramount is really getting food on the table, and that you have to survive. And even with companies, right, and with their employees, you just see recently, yesterday on TikTok, the union of all the banks, right, the bank employees are staging a protest against all the CEOs of the banks in Malaysia. And bank union members are multiracial, okay, and they just don't want their rights and their benefits at that level being squeezed, okay. They can't, and then you are going to get a dissent, or you're going to have problems when people have no food on the table. Then it causes all these marches and protests. You don't want that. So at least in Malaysia, we're not that bad in a way. But if it comes to the stage that they're going to the ground to do all these protests, and they will call, and irresponsible politicians, if they start using this racial thing to divide and rule, and then it will be problematic. I think it's quite delicate at this moment.
The
And
whole world is delicate.
it's just delicate.
Rita.
Yeah.
I think it's not unique to
To
Malaysia.
Malaysia.
Whether we are integrated, united, or whether, it doesn't matter. It is now, in the next 10 years, is going to be, geopolitics is going to rule the world, and that is going to determine finally how we're going to live. Not all this whose socks are cleaner and whose religion is more all that is going to be driven by a global narrative. We can't even control that because we're too small in the scheme of things. Whether you're talking about Palestine, whether you're talking about China, whether you're talking about whether Russia, Iran, all that is going to go to war or not, that is the thing that is going to determine the society in the next 10 years, not what we think of each other.
Okay, I can't wait to get into that, right? But before we get into that, because that's a huge discussion by itself.
It is.
Sabah Sarawak, okay? There's been talk of, I'll say it because I know you maybe can't, secession, right? At least 3 or 4 states have talked about it or have done so in the past, or at least applied to do so, including my homestead of Penang. before independence, okay? So Sabah Sarawak, how dissatisfied are they? Do they stay federated? Do they want to move out? Just what's the temperature,
Okay, I'm going to say something very, very controversial today. Okay,
Please do
it's
so.
it's all on podcast, so we can always decide to censor it if we want to, right? I don't know if you actually listened to Professor Sachs when he was here a couple of weeks ago.
Jeffrey Sachs.
Yes,
Jeffrey Sachs
Jeffrey
in
Sachs,
Sunway. Okay, and yes, his topic was mainly geopolitics, of course. And same thing. If you want to talk about secession, I think he implied that I think Malaysia has to be very careful how they're going to play the geopolitics. And that is totally in line with how I see it on the ground as well. If you want to talk about Sabah and Sarawak, all these things that you talk about, succession, cannot happen unless there is external interference. I'm very sure of that. Okay? You ask me for proof, I can't.
So
But-
who provokes?
What do you think? Either your neighbors or the superpowers. Because we are right in the center of, if you want to talk about South China Sea, we are in between the largest body of the South China Sea. Anything north of Malaysia is, Vietnam and all that is more the East China side. Indonesia is out of it because they're too far. They're too
Well,
far
it's
down.
no accident that they actually chose to relocate the new capital
Okay.
to just under you guys, right?
No, I don't think that's going to happen. Actually,
I think
it's not going to happen anymore.
It's probably off the table now.
Yeah.
The new
The
capital.
new capital, yeah.
The new
yes,
capital.
Yes.
For me, I think Kuching, it will actually, for Kuching, it actually serves them better to move closer to Singapore. That has better resonance than Nusantara.
Actually, to add to that, it's probably you might see some regional blocks. Our states have some regional blocks with our neighbors. That is starting to happen, and they will do it first to trade.
So you're talking quite abstract terms: regional blocks, neighboring people, intervention, provocations, superpowers, neighbors.
Yep.
Can you please get into the weeds there a little bit? Which ones? Give us some names.
Give us some. When you talk about South China Sea, is U.S. versus China. That's it. Okay, they will come knocking on our doors very, very hard with the carrot and also with the stick. So we got to know how to play this game.
How does the carrot look and how does the stick look?
Well, the carrot is always economic wealth,
Trade, yeah. Okay.
investment, technology, AI, human capital. We are also one of, fortunately or unfortunately, we are also one of the very, very important hubs for chips, which is the future of AI. I mean,
Malaysia's now even talked about as the
whether
next
it's-
Taiwan, as
Yeah,
the case
so
may be.
whether it's space technology, whether it's AI, whether it's space travel, whatever it is, 6G, 5G, 6G, all that, you need all this. So we are in the eye of the storm. Okay, we are in the eye of the storm. Make no mistake about that. So to me, that is going to be the one that will drive the ethnic as well as your state politics for the next 10 years.
It looks as if that, to be more specific, right, when I talk about regional, I'm really looking at Singapore, Johor, Sabah and Sarawak as one block. Okay, that can come more. And then with the state of politics and the play that we are at the moment and less of federalism, right?
I feel it's more Sarawak, Johor, Singapore.
Not
and
Sabah.
then Sabah
Is sitting
a little bit
with
further out with Philippines.
Yeah, could be that.
That's interesting. So Johor, Singapore, and Borneo essentially, or maybe Borneo minus
Sarawak
one.
and Sarawak.
Sarawak and Sabah are not the same country.
Not the best, yeah.
Yeah.
Not the same country, yeah?
Not
Okay,
the same.
people always say it in the same breath as if it's the same country. It is not the same.
Absolutely not.
We do not see eye to eye on a lot of things, okay?
So can you please talk about that first?
What,
How
Sabah and
do
Sarawak?
these three blocks, or these three plus this extra blocks of what are the commonalities? What are the common interests?
For the three blocks, you're talking about
Say
which
Johor,
one?
Singapore, Sarawak.
Sarawak.
Yeah.
I look at it this way. I think that Johor is also attempting to be more and more like autonomous, right? You can see that
same like
way.
Sing- yeah, same like
Sarawak is also
Sarawak definitely
really
they
is
can afford it because they are bigger, they
yeah.
have the energy, they have
Yeah.
resources, and also now with the emphasis on English, right? If they're interested looking at Nusantara, they'll be encouraging the people to speak Bahasa Indonesia. Why are they not doing that?
That's a telltale sign.
That's a telltale sign
Yeah.
already,
And then with
right?
Singapore,
That they do not intend to be that close to Indonesia because they want to be they want to move closer to
Where the money is.
where the money is. Which
So
they
that's
say-
America?
America,
Yeah.
Singapore.
I won't
I
discount.
feel-
I
I
won't
feel that
discount
would
now. Well, whether it's America, I guess that because it's very pragmatic. Whether you are Sarawakian or whether you're in Johor, right, Singapore, your trade interests do matter. I mean, if China is going to invest in a big way in your country or in your state, you're not going to say no, right? And then America, based on their how they see the region, are they going to come in and which states are they going to come in? So they will look at how, I guess that if I'm American and looking at the way that they want to play the geopolitics, if the Chinese is going to be in Johor or if the
Well,
Chinese is going to be in
same thing
Singapore or
with
Sarawak.
Sarawak is actually recognizing UEC. Why? For the simple reason, like what you said, they understand the geopolitics. The geopolitics is driving the state. That is the cohesion. There you go with the cohesion. The cohesion is there. That's it. Don't
But the
force-
cohesion is at state level for Sarawak.
Yeah, of course, Sarawak, because Sarawak cannot
Yes.
dominate the national politics, so they can only do what they have to look after their own people first, right? So that's maybe in a sense that's where your answer is, you know.
Yeah, and
So
Sabah
this
and Sarawak especially, Fui, probably is what you call that cohesion of the multi-ethnic feeling and working together is actually there. Although there are some undertones, but I think whether you're Sarawakian Chinese or Iban or Malay, they do feel as one with undertones.
Actually, if you go to Sarawak, I feel that the Sarawak Chinese don't understand the other ethnic groups either.
Of
They don't.
course. Yeah, of
They don't.
course.
But the main thing is that they're Sarawakians. Okay, you live how you want to live. I live how I want to live. I get my Chinese schools. I get my UEC. I can help you with grow the state. When there's Chinese investments or bridging this and so on and so forth. And you do your own thing. So I again, there is no in Sarawak we don't talk about, or even Sabah for that matter. Oh, you must be this. You need to understand me this, and you need to do this, and it's like it's irrelevant. It's an irrelevant conversation.
What does Singapore look for from Johor and Sarawak?
Land, resources,
Of
people.
course, land mass,
Natural
land mass,
Resources, right?
resources,
Labor.
because,
Labor.
You know how many people travel up and down
then
Johor
investments and
and
things
Singapore.
like this. So if Johor is, if they have their foresight, a little bit beyond, whatever that we've talked about. Oh, you got to be this, you got to be integrated. I think you're going to be stuck. You're going to be stuck with that conversation, and I feel that is a conversation of the past.
How close to a union, if that term can be used, between Singapore, Sarawak, and Johor? And if that union, as it's perceived now, comes to fruition, how does it look in the future, especially in the context of federal Malaysia?
I think that there will be a lot of legalities, and I think you need to keep that aside. But as a trade bloc, probably,
Okay.
like a close trade bloc, it will always have to start something like that. It's not about. It's about the economics of things and the trade. Johor and Singapore are so closely related now in terms of moving people moving up and down Singapore, Johorians going into Singapore to work, and Singaporeans every weekend, most of them will come out to whenever they can to Malaysia
Yeah.
to for holiday for a short break. So you already can see this Johor Singapore dynamics has been going on for a very long time, and now you see it only takes you 1 hour 10 minutes to fly from Singapore to Kuching, but from KL it takes you 1 hour 40 minutes. Okay, so that close, and there are lots and lots of daily flights now between Singapore and Sarawak as well. And Sarawak have also actually started their own agencies, trade agencies, that are going around the world on their own, promoting Sarawak, okay, not Malaysia, promoting Sarawak.
In fact,
Okay.
in the I think the last I think, was it last year when they had this World Tourism Forum or Expo or something in Europe?
Yeah, they took it on
They
their
took
own.
it on their own.
Yeah, in
They don't
Germany.
even bought, in Germany. You know how expensive that is, and their booth is as big as the Malaysian one.
Very interesting.
And you look at some of the energy policies that they have, because they have all the ingredients for green. All right, so they said, okay, I want hydrogen in my to use the use of hydrogen, but we are not hearing it on Peninsula side. So they are also going on their own, a lot of it on their own.
So given that this pact could be the precursor of something a little bit more concrete, right? Does Federation step in and try and interfere, or
They don't have
disrupt?
the energy at the moment now. They're just too distracted with too many things. I mean, the diesel removal of the diesel subsidy in Peninsula is already causing so much grief. They're so just preoccupied with that. And then with the Prime Minister
And
also
politicians
trying...
being politicians, they're thinking about the next GE, okay?
Yes.
So this is like, oh, no. Okay, as long as you can make your own money, I think they're very happy that, Sarawak is so, so independent in that sense, at least financially.
So this might well blindside them, lah.
Maybe. Yeah.
And what about you
that might-
guys? What happens to Sabah?
Sabah is a bit of a basket case, I'm afraid. We don't know where we're going, what we want to be, and who we are, because we have so many illegal immigrants in our midst.
And generations of illegals.
In generations. So it is not an easy problem of, let's just close our borders, get rid of. No, it's not. It's not like that. People have intermarried, and so it is. There is no solution. I don't see a immediate solution to that. So as long as that prevails, our fate in many ways is actually tied to Philippines. So as long as that is continuing, I just don't know where we're gonna head to.
So it's lost until it's found, lah.
It's lost until it's found. Yes,
Okay.
and I certainly don't have a solution to that. And in fact, that is also a geopolitical weak point, which means that the hotspots and the flashpoints can be right in front of our doorstep. So that's what
I
we're
think the
dealing with.
geopolitics should not be underestimated, Chuang, because that seems to be okay. Let's see how the American elections play out now, and then when the new president is elected in November, December, then we will see how the play is going to come out. And then at the same time, the succession planning for China, whether the policies will actually continue after Xi Jinping, I guess it will, because they seem to be quite...
No, I think China knows. China knows where it wants to be. It's not about Xi Jinping. Where they are today is it's a 50-year plan, and they have got a 150-year plan in front of them. So it's not a Xi Jinping. Xi Jinping, you look at it because he's very, he's tall. You can see his presence, you can feel his presence and things like this. But generally speaking,
I think the Chinese already
they know where they want to be in 50 years' time, in 100 years' time. They already have
their master plan.
Their master plan there. Russia is a little bit different. It's what you see Russia today is really very much driven by Putin, because he doesn't have that kind of, that the legacy he had was, Soviet Union, which is something they don't want to go back to, right? And if it wasn't for him, Russia would not be where it is today. But at the same time, he cannot live forever. So Russia may have this, it's a bumpy road still. But for me, China, you talk to people there, they know where they want to be, and they kind of know how they want to deal with America, how they want to deal with a hegemon that is now very much weakened and moving from a unipolar to a multipolar new order, if you will. It's not going to be an easy road. No hegemons, no empires go down without a fight. None.
So, spill the beans, Free. How does it unfold? What is the 50-year plan? How did they deal with America? And what's the path towards hegemon?
I think at this moment,
Unipolar.
I think at this moment, between China and America, there's total distrust. Okay,
Yeah.
you can already see that, right? So they have they're very acrimonious already. Okay, it doesn't and each is watching each other, and whether you have another Kissinger figure that ever will come about from the American side, and then on the Chinese side you have to have some interlocutor to be able to talk about this. But their actions at this moment between the two countries is actually causing quite a bit of grief for Asian countries too, because we are going to be like between two elephants fighting, and we're going to get stomped. Okay. So I'm not sure that the Malaysian public in general are sort of like have thought about it a lot, but business people certainly have. What's going to happen? Okay, do I deal more with the Americans? Do I get more investments from America, or do I come, and then how do I deal with China? Okay, so it's it's still to be played out. It has to be still to be played out because you can't really see. So from my point of view, I'm not sure about Fui. For the next 10 years, it's just a lot of roller coaster and up and down, and a lot of instability, changes, right? And governments might be just hanging on, hanging on. They might come in, current ones will come in again, but in very delicate position, and then have to not compromise, probably have to give in. So it's up to the skill of negotiation. And if you look beyond Anwar Ibrahim, who is the next leader? Who are they all in line?
Yeah.
Yeah. Who?
Yeah, going back to your question about what that would look like on a global scale, you can't deny the fact that I think at least for the next 10 years, if nobody is assassinated, it will be Russia and China driving that force. Now, how America is going to react to it, there are a lot of theories, and I'm sure there are a lot of experts out there that can have different views and all that kind of thing. Basically, I think right now the at least the dominant view, the dominant global view is that the multipolarity will look like the US will continue to be a force. I think because it is a big country, as bad as it is, whatever you see on the news cycle and what they're doing, I think it is a force that people will still have to be wary of. But you may have a situation, or it is actually becoming a little bit more apparent that they may not command the same kind of compliance as before. That's
This
all.
50-year plan that you talk of where China is concerned, how does that relate to Malaysia? How does the Malaysia and, in fact, ASEAN interplay with this plan? Is it militaristic? Is it diplomatic? Is it trade-based? How does
I think
it look
it's
like?
all three.
Yeah.
It's all three. The way they have actually built their military base, you can't say that.
deny that.
You can't deny they've said, we only just want to do trade. No, I don't.
No, I think
so.
it's the weightage also.
It's like,
Is it all three equal, Fui? I think the weightage is still
I think
economic.
for them, they're not going to fix, this is 30%, this is 40%. No, they're not going to do that. I think the Chinese for them, it's actually more, their main interest is to grow China economically. Right?
They must look after their own
They
people
must look
first.
after their own people first.
Yeah.
Whether it's military, whether it's whatever, that depends on how you guys are going to react.
So fair
Right.
means or foul?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean they've learned from the
Of course.
from the Americans, but the only difference is that they're not going to go around creating wars for out of I don't know whatever
Okay
just
lah.
to show that I'm dominant. I was watching an interview another interview on some of these podcasts, right, and a comedian. Okay, sometimes these comedians are quite
Oh yeah,
quite
they're
quite
commentators.
they're
essentially.
commentators actually. Someone said, okay, China has been a communist country for 70 years. Okay, communist country for 70 years. But they've been a capitalist for 2,000 years.
Yeah. That is so true.
Right? So you can say that they were whatever. At the end of the day, it's about their own people first. Fair enough. And if you leave me alone to my 中国, center of the universe, I don't care what you do.
And
The only problem is that when you come, put your gunboats and everything on my shores, that's when I get upset.
So it's very important actually now to actually watch what the Chinese are doing in the region. You see, they are trying to probably take control of all the trade routes, where may it be land or sea. So the developments around because Malaysia is so open, we are all water, waters everywhere, surrounded by water, and we have been so highly dependable on the sea routes, right, for trade, right? So whoever will take control of those routes. And the Chinese, I don't think, will have any hesitation in putting money into developing land
Yep.
routes
Correct.
or or enhancing sea routes, redeveloping ports, just to get control.
To circumvent the risk. For them, the big thing is de-risking. Okay, why they had actually gone to Africa long time ago,
Is to get
20
the
over,
commodities
is to make sure that
raw-
they de-risk. They do not want to just because the whole world was dependent on Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, the Middle East. Okay, they already have been developing all these relationships with Africa and South America on the onset of joining WTO in year 2001, I believe. So now they're actually building alternative routes away from Suez Canal, Panama Canal, because all this is actually monopolized by essentially the West. So they are developing. So if you come back to Malaysia again, why South China Sea is so important? If China actually manages to circumvent some, or at least relieve some pressure from the choke point of of Straits of Malacca and Singapore, say for example through Thailand, or Thailand, for us Thailand is very important. You may see a de-escalation, but if they don't succeed in that, you will see the tensions will continue to prevail. So coming back to your regional blocks, how I see in the next 10 years is, if coming back to these alternate roads, now if they manage to get an alternate road from the Andaman Sea into the South China Sea or through Thailand, the Kra Bridge. Now, if that becomes a reality, I mean, it's still up for debate. Some people say it won't happen. Some people say it will happen, expensive, do a job. Okay, that aside, Thai Parliament has already approved it. Okay, so it happens or not, it is a matter. Maybe now it's only about money. Okay, now if that happens, you will see then our northern states, Kedah, Kelantan, to a certain extent, maybe northern Perak and part of Terengganu. If they're clever, if those states can come together and work with the southern Thailand, they can make something out of it.
That's all to
Then
play for.
you have Johor, Singapore, and Sarawak work on their maybe the high-tech side or chips or whatever it is. And to me, again, I go back to Sabah. Sabah's fate will all depend on what Philippines is going to do. I know a lot of people don't agree and people don't see it, but for me, as long as that matter is not settled, we'll forever be lost in that part of the world.
Lost in wilderness.
Well, lost in wilderness.
Yes. Although it's a beautiful country to live. I mean, state. It's really beautiful.
Oh, gorgeous.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, gorgeous.
Yeah.
So guys, ladies, We haven't talked about the Americans yet, right? And it's obviously quite a bit of an inflection point right now because we don't know which way that swing is going to go. What's your sense?
I I don't think it matters very much. Certainly for countries like Russia and China, if you take their stance, for example, for them it's irrelevant. You know, American elections just come and go every 4 years. Their trajectory is a lot clearer. So whether it's going to be Biden, Kamala Harris, JD Vance, or whatever, I think it matters very, very little. I think more importantly is how they're going to deal with their $35 trillion debt that is going to put their dollar at a great risk as a safe haven or even as a global reserve. And how that is going to move forward into a digital era, I think that is one thing that they have to deal with. Then secondly, how they're going to deal with the tensions in the Middle East. For them, for me, America, the Middle East is still a priority for them over Asia. Asia is only China. Why? Because China is what they consider a peer competitor. It's competition. It is crucial to the survival of the economy and the people and so forth. So I don't think that's going to change no matter which government comes in, which party comes in, sorry.
I think with the policymakers, whether it's going to be whichever president that is going to come in America, right? I think the mindset at the moment is it will be driven very much like you say, the Middle East politics is very important. China is going to be really
to me it's these two.
Is a competitor, and the real worry I think for Americans is that is whether there will be de-dollarization, and know whether alternate currencies are going to or alternate trading, how you settle payments. Is it going to be like the American system or European system, SWIFT code, or they're going to develop another system? I mean, it's coming, but to the scale, we're not sure. I don't think also the Chinese would want to also destabilize the dollar too much too. They can't because there's so much bonds, right? Yeah, they hold so much. I think they're the single largest holder of US dollar bond,
No. Japan. Japan and South Korea.
Japan is
They've
larger.
reduced in
I think
recent
they've
years.
reduced.
Yeah.
They've reduced in the last few years, especially few months. I think it's down to maybe 700 billion now. It was over.
Well, T-bill auctions have been found wanting, right? So that's one thing.
That's right.
So we can be selfish. We can be selfish and say we don't really care what happens in America. We only care how it relates to us in ASEAN, right? And that $35 trillion debt, does that mean they can't afford to wage war or they can't trigger war? Because they're very provocative in that sense, right?
I think they want to. I think that about war, right? War means the building of arms, and it's going to be driven. It's going to be driven again.
I don't know how they're going to. You see, in the last 20 years, America has actually built, or at least Washington has actually surrounded themselves with what you call neoconservatives, or at least the neo-colonialism and capitalism and all that kind of thing. And that's so much so that, the elites have made so much money. And you know what it's like. I think that's going to be so difficult to break no matter which president comes in. And until and unless the American people can take a grip on their own politics to be able to at least have some semblance of representation by the people, that approach to war and so on is going to continue. I don't see that flipping anytime soon.
Does the dollar break down? Does the world move towards?
I think the signs are there. I mean, I'm an economist, right?
Yeah.
So I think everyone agrees that the signs are all there. But the thing is that it's all been there for the last 20, 30 years anyway. So it's a matter of time. But then how long? Is it going to take another 5 years, or is it going to take another 10 years? Some people say it can be next month. It could be 2025. Some people say it's 2030. Some people say it's 2050. So I think if once we go and say when and all that kind of thing, then you're going to go into an area of punting at the market, which is not what it is. I think what it is that I think the trajectory is certainly you will see. Definitely, if you believe that the world is going to a multipolar direction, then dollar dominance will also have to go.
I mean, there was a time for the guilder to fade away, and same for the sterling as well. So,
Yeah.
But if you are saying that it's a matter of when, not if, again, then it comes back to how we interact with the forces at Bila, right?
Well, that is what I'm trying to say. In the last forum, I think with another think tank, is that I don't think the government is looking into that. We're still looking at, like I said, social integration, okay, whatever. We are still focusing on that. And the last time I looked at our gold reserve, it's been like this static for the last, I think it's maybe about 38 to 40,000 tons or something like that, and it's still the same for the last 10 years or something.
Why does the gold reserve matter?
It does matter because if you want to talk about de-dollarization, it has to be it will have to move into a gold standard. And
backed by gold.
Yeah, backed by. So we're going back to the gold standard, because that is the only commodity that doesn't have an opposing authority, if you like.
Well, let's talk now of the electronic version of gold, right? You know what that is, right?
Yeah,
what do you think about that?
Again, it's going to be developed into another fiat currency.
You're talking about Bitcoin, are you?
We are talking about Bitcoin, talking about digital currency. But the point being is that is the de-dollarization process you're talking about. That is the thing. It will go hand in hand with multipolarity.
It depends on how fast it will move. But what we are really trying to point out here, or at least I'm looking at it as that, how unstable really the next 10 years would be. Okay. You can't really, I mean, because all of these are now being played out, all these balls in the air now. And you don't really know where it's really heading. Okay. Sometimes it's this, sometimes it's that, And then we also have not talked about India, the effect, how India is going to influence also the region, and how the Americans and the Chinese, in their own way, will be using India as well. Don't forget that we also do a lot of trade, and we have a lot of generational people that have come from India as well.
I think long and short is there are a lot of risks and a lot of opportunities, new opportunities being presented to us. It's not so clear anymore. But the thing is that if our policymakers continue to look at all these kind of domestic things, I think we're missing the boat.
With narrow
In fact, we're missing the boat.
We are quite clearly missing the boat. Is there anyone within the current retinue that you see has even one iota of
I don't know. I think it boils down to people like you and me. We'll have to keep on talking about it until we get their attention to say, yeah. That hasn't happened yet. Okay, so the pin hasn't dropped yet. So I think we've got to continue to talk about it.
But Fui, I think there must be political leaders or potential leaders that can come into office that will be able to talk about this. But the problem is if they're not in the system, then who is going to be talking about it? Is it going to be government-led, or is it going to be like private sector-led? Or is it going to be the royal houses? Because the royal houses, some of them are very active,
There's a couple of them with a few...
Yeah.
Well, with some substance, shall I say. There's a couple of them, right? At least we hope so.
Well, so it's quite
people
fluid.
are talking about it, but it hasn't impacted policy just yet. So that is, that is where I find the opportunity that is, I mean, we're not taking advantage of the situation enough, because I feel that it is not, it's not necessary. Yes, it is a risk, but at the same time, there are a lot of opportunities, as I've mentioned just now.
So the next 10 years, very unsettled, a lot of turmoil. At an individual level, how should people position to deal with this volatility?
Wow. I think it boils down to competitiveness, right?
No, individual as in like father of the household, mother of the household,
Back to grassroots and basics.
yeah, I mean, how should we as individuals, right?
back to
Do we
making
save
sure
up?
that
Do we put some money in gold? Do we like acquire
I
some
think at the
digital
end of the day,
skills?
it's still about being competitive. Make sure that you have the right skills and all that kind of thing. Now, then that's a different story. Should you be studying science? Should you be studying arts? Or should be? I think that's going into a
How are you
really,
advising
really
your own
very-
children, like, for example, and how are you positioning yourselves personally, knowing what you know about the next 10 years? I think that's
Trung,
the
I'm at
easiest.
retirement age, so I'm okay, I guess.
But you're so healthy, you're going to live for another 30 years at
What are you
least.
going to tell your grandchildren?
Yeah.
Of course, my grandchildren are, so how do you school them now,
Yes.
to prepare for what? It's
Yes.
actually it's very difficult to see. But you look at, I'm just watching how the Chinese are educating their people.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is very critical. Look at what they're teaching at the school. They're really, now in the whole world, right? China probably has the most number of students knowing STEM, STEM, right? And they're all trained that way. Train for the AI, train for the digital world.
And I think that's where Sarawak wants to go. And also, I think the Chinese schools here, the Chinese community is definitely focused on that. I mean, so much so people say it's at the expense of understanding arts, philosophy, history, and all that. But don't care, they just do that, because they just want to survive, and that's how I see the Chinese community. Whether I agree with it or not is another thing, but that's how they think that they can survive. Because if you ask the younger generation Chinese, I would say 90% of them, most of them don't trust China. Simply because they
don't really relate to it. Actually, they don't really.
No,
they know.
they do.
With the
they
films
do.
and
They
all that.
do.
Yeah, and
They
food.
do. But they do travel to China too. They do. But at the end of the day, China is a competitor
For the Chinese too.
for the
here.
Malaysian Chinese.
That would be a big discovery for other non-Chinese Malaysians who have this idea that the Chinese are in bed with the China Chinese.
No,
they are
not at all.
That was
Not
quite
at all.
vehement.
You're far. Yeah, I'm very sure about that because I mean we've done the research. For the younger people who are actually have this romantic notion of China are the older ones, 55 and above, or maybe even 60 and above.
But not the younger ones.
Not the younger ones.
So who do the younger ones relate to the most?
Americans.
Yeah, I can tell my daughter is,
Koreans.
eyeball
Koreans,
deep in
yeah.
TikTok.
Japan.
Manga,
Yeah.
That kind
anime.
of thing.
It's a different world.
They may be. They may consume Taobao. They may consume. I don't know.
They speak the language.
They speak the language.
And they read
They
it.
They do travel to China, but
Because it's
they're still very pro Taiwan. If you look at Taiwan, and that's how I think that's how Malaysian Chinese see them, the young people. Like, yeah, I know you're a big guy. You're also living. I'm also living next to you, so I have to kind of not poke you, but at the same time, can you? I want your money, but can you leave me alone?
But it's a very important point that you have made, Chuang. You know why? Because you can't have the Malay community or the other communities think that just because we are Chinese, right, that China is favoring it and then China may be a threat. They must get away from that notion. So we actually have to get that message out. No, we are Chinese, but we're really Malaysians. We are all in this together. It's not necessary just because I'm Chinese that we are going to be protected by China. I don't think there's any of that.
I think that notion, I think we should break that down. That
We
one
should
I
break
agree.
it down.
That one I
We
think
have
I
to
agree.
break
We have
that
to break
down.
that down. That that they think that Chinese feel that they are. Oh yeah, okay. I know why they're so arrogant is because they
China
think
is
that
so great.
China is backing them. No, it is not true at all. People who have actually traveled to China. I'm talking about Malaysian Chinese. We all know. Okay, they don't see us as Chinese, and if there's anything, they're not going to come with their gunboats and their military to come and help you. Sorry, okay, they are going to fleece you if they're going to make money from you.
And also,
so they're not. It's all about business. So that is something that I think other non-Chinese need to understand. But at the same time, we think that Malaysia are hostile towards us because we are Chinese and because of China. Look at what happened yesterday. Yesterday, while Netanyahu arrived in Washington, at the same time, Wang Yi got 14 factions of the Palestinian groups together to sign an agreement to work together between even Hamas and Fatah. That is all over TikTok in the Malay circles and Indonesia as well. That China is the honest broker in the Middle East. And that's how they see it. And there have been numerous TikToks in Malay of how much aid has gone into Gaza in the last 6
From
months.
China.
From China.
Yeah. So actually that helps.
That has actually really reconfigured the Malay mind about China. Now, will they then automatically link that to Chinese, Malaysian Chinese or not? I'm not sure. I haven't done the research because maybe it's just too raw and too recent or whatever. But if that continues, if China plays an important role
in the
Middle East as a peacemaker, that can actually work for us if we know how to place the narrative correctly. So that's what I'm saying. All these things about whether yes, I agree that there should be more conversations amongst the different ethnic groups. It's always better, of course. Conversations are always good, but to go back to I'm suspicious of you, yes, but I think all these old structures are gone. The new conversation is this.
It's just about starting, actually.
It's just about starting.
Yeah.
Actually, it's about starting.
It's just about starting.
It's good because if China, as you say rightly, wants to de-risk, it doesn't want. Nobody wants a war because war is just destructive and disruptive, right? But I still need to ask a question. Do you think, as widely feared, a great war is coming? And I think secondarily, does China take Taiwan by force?
No, I don't think China will take Taiwan by force. I really think it's a very Western narrative.
Driven by Westerners, I think.
Because they want China to strike first. Everyone agrees that Taiwan is part of China, and China thinks
one China policy.
Okay, Taiwan is literally called Republic of China. Okay, it's a matter
Taiwan
of
ROC.
Yeah, ROC, right?
Yeah.
So people say, I say, hey, look at the name. Okay, it's literally Republic of China. Is whether you agree when Taiwan was given to China, whether it was actually given to Kuomintang under Chiang Kai-shek at that time, or literally where the center power should be. Should it be ruled from Taipei or it should be from Beijing? Okay. Today, that conversation is no longer valid. Obviously, Taiwan's not going to take over China anymore. I think
It's impossible.
It's impossible.
Yeah.
40, 50 years ago, maybe, but today, no, right? That ship has sailed. And I think for China, if you talk to ordinary Chinese people in China, what they think about Taiwan, they're like, look, Taiwan, there's so much Chinese investments in Taiwan. 100,000 Chinese businessmen are working or doing business in China.
Taiwanese businessmen.
Taiwanese businessmen, sorry. And a lot of them are married to local Chinese women, having Chinese babies and so on. At the same time, Taiwan population's 24 million? And they have one of the lowest birth rates in the world. In a generation's time, they don't even have enough males to join the army. In fact, our friend told me, what's her name? Jennifer. My nephew, she says, I don't know whether I should be saying this on podcast or not. You know how they have national service. Anything more than 30 degrees, you have to cancel the drill.
Alamak.
Okay.
These are the guys.
These are the guys defending
Oh
Taiwan.
my
Okay.
gosh.
So I'm not dissing them, but the thing is, Taiwan is not Ukraine. People need to understand that. Mothers of soldiers are sipping coffee in Starbucks. You think they want their sons to fight 1 billion Chinese?
Siao ah.
Crazy or what?
Why do I want
you
my
can
son
do.
to die?
I mean, you can do all this thing, that thing, all the sword formation, porcupine strategy. I don't know, whatever battle strategy and formation you have. Or you can do 1,000 of these stratagems, and read Sun Tzu from cover to cover. It's a no-brainer.
Chang, I think I would like to suggest at this stage that you may have to re-look at how you want to do
Position,
all the
yeah.
position. You know why? I think it would be good for you to do some visits to Taiwan. Go and
I spent a month in Taiwan 2 years ago. I've been to China twice in the last 1 year. Harbin and Beijing in the east, Yunnan and Tibet in the west. I spent 2 months in total. I think I have an idea what you're trying to say.
Yes.
There is none of that discord that the West would have us believe. The development there is off the scale,
Yes,
off the
what you
roof.
should,
No,
what you should
exactly.
do is that you should go back into Hong Kong and use Hong Kong as your start point, and then take the train go into Shenzhen. I mean, and then from Hong Kong travel by road to Macau and Zhuhai and all these areas, right? And take the train directly into Beijing and with the stop and just look at
Immerse, yeah, absolutely.
how China has changed.
I totally agree with you guys,
And
Rita.
with this recent trip by Putin to Beijing, don't underestimate that. Can you imagine they have actually shared a border for centuries? I mean, for millions of years actually. But the thing is, Moscow, or at least Russia, has always looked to the West for inspiration, whether it's art, music, philosophy, and so on. But first time they have a joint cooperation. You have a look at the document. It's only issued in Chinese and in Russian. I already had it translated to English. It's actually available on the website. I will share it with you.
Yeah, send.
Have a look at it. Look at the 10 areas of cooperation. You can imagine the clarity of that document of no limit cooperation. You should read it. It is only 25 pages or something like that. It's not very long, but they're so
Their
clear.
thought process,
The thought process is so clear. Every single word would have been approved by Xi Jinping. Every word would have been approved by Putin. Otherwise, they wouldn't put it down. And the level of cooperation you will see between China and Russia, it is going to be very difficult to unravel for the West. And they will think, I think the West will think twice now about Taiwan.
Very powerful.
It's a very powerful document. It is so fascinating from
and not being in English, that's even more fascinating.
Yes.
They're
At
trying
the
to tell you,
starting point.
you translate. If you are curious about it, you can
do your work.
You go and do your homework. We're going to go on with
Russian
our
and
thing.
Chinese.
Fantastic.
So it's so for me, China is just, their world is just, their opportunities out there is for them is almost unlimitless. They're not going to be stopped by whether it's going to be Biden, Trump. That is so temporary.
Insignificant.
Trump is only going to be he's only going to have no matter how much damage he will do if he wants to China. I'm saying you can say
Only
war.
4 years.
You can say it's only going to be 4 years.
Yeah.
My history is it's thousands
of years. Yeah.
and my future is hundreds of years ahead. What 4 years? It's to them it doesn't even come
different
into
dimension.
Totally.
Do they instigate a third war though?
Who? China.
Well, the powers that be. Do they instigate? Do they manage to instigate?
I think that
Who are you talking about? US.
Well, whatever. I mean, how it plays out, if it actually plays out, is a lot of people fear, right? This next great war.
No, but the thing is, Chuang, you don't have to talk about the next Great War. There are already a lot of hotspots.
Correct.
There are
That's
really
right.
very
It's
terrible.
already. If you ask my
Middle East, that one
if you
is
ask my son, he's already started.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Already started. So what are we talking
Well,
about?
does it get
It's
kinetic
already,
though?
Yeah.
Does it get kinetic?
Well, it is already kinetic. It is already kinetic. I mean, if you really want to put a date to it, I would say the Third World War started with Ukraine in 2020, February 2022. That would be a good starting point. Now, then it's going to escalate, comes down, like that for the next 10 years.
Rita, free. I have a feeling we're going to be revisiting this discussion many times in the future. There's no conclusion because there's a lot of things that have to erupt or unearth before the next
Yes.
the next
yes.
step can take place,
Please,
right?
Correct,
Yes.
correct.
Yes.
But none of us can tell the future, so
Yeah.
conversations must happen.
So
Yes.
our Chinese community is also moving. I mean, you have to talk to the young people. They're moving. They're still moving. They're still moving. And you should be interviewing my guys here
The younger
rather
ones.
than us.
Us.
Maybe the next.
Yeah, you go and interview.
In interview Wing.
Yeah.
Oh, Jonathan.
Oh, Jonathan. Jonathan,
My son.
the son
he
that
did he did
military
military
history.
Oh, very good.
He will tell you what is going on.
You cannot tell the future without telling the past first, interpreting the past.
Yes.
It's
So
just
actually, a lot of the mindset that we have been trapped in. I mean, even myself, right? We just got to now in
got
this
to
era. You just got
break
to
that
throw it
away.
away. You have to throw it out because the world order is also is changing and has changed, right? And it's so fluid. It's just still trying to look for that what we call stability. Ain't
But what
happen
is
in the
clear?
short term.
But what is clear is that we are moving into several superpowers. Like,
Powers,
it's not a singular
Not like
Western
before,
bloc
probably.
from before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But someone like Jonathan will tell you that they will return in about 200 years.
Well, we're not around already.
We're not going to be around.
Yeah.
But what
yeah.
happens between now and 200 years doesn't matter.
But that's the thing. That's what I mean by the next 10 years. How does one position oneself?
You just talk about 10 years. That's
Yeah, yeah.
enough.
That's
yeah.
it. That's
Yeah,
enough.
That's it. Yeah. Okay, Chuan.
Okay,
Thank you
you
so
very much,
much.
both of you. It was a huge honor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Great.
Okay.
Comes here.